Army calls them the tip of the spear. They are the original A-Team, the secret soldiers who stand ready 24/7 for covert missions behind enemy lines. Tonight, we go behind closed doors and into the world of special forces to find out what it takes to wear the Green Beret.
They perform within the shadows. Their impact felt a world away. They are part of America's covert forces sent to gather intelligence. The saviors of those caught behind enemy lines. Teachers of local people in foreign countries in need of military skills. The epitome of unconventional warriors. Their motto, anytime, any place, anywhere to liberate the oppressed.
We're given a lot of responsibility. We could be working in the jungles of Latin America one moment and working at the diplomatic level and embassies at the next. The variety of missions that we perform are numerous, and there's never a dull moment.
Fort Bragg, North Carolina, headquarters for the U.S. military's Special Operations Command. Their training area is highly classified. Few have ever been let inside. For me, it was an extraordinary journey into the hearts and minds of the men known as the U.S. Army's Green Berets.
What makes a good Special Forces soldier?
You have to have the ability to handle stress, both physical and mental. You have to be comfortable with ambiguity. You have to have a fair amount of self-confidence in your ability to do the right thing at the right time and make the proper decisions.
Ambiguity, the ability to deal with ambiguity. In what way?
It means not having to have people tell you what to do, the instinct to sort through a large amount of often conflicting information, which happens quite often in deployment in a foreign country where you're dealing with different factions, and arrive at ground truth.
Special Forces is an all-male unit that dates back to 1952. In a dangerous world, a gathering of volunteers was assembled to conduct guerrilla warfare behind enemy lines in small groups. They distinguished themselves from other units by wearing green berets. Then in 1960, that one piece of headgear became the most legendary part of their uniform when it caught the eye of President John F. Kennedy during a visit to Fort Bragg. President Kennedy called it a mark of distinction and a badge of courage. For the remainder of the 20th century, Special Forces earned a reputation as fearless warriors. Wherever, whenever conflict erupted, they were there. They still are. Today's Special Forces number just over 2,000. 2 men can successfully complete a mission, but a traditional Operation Detachment Alpha, or A-Team, consists of 12 of the most well-trained men in U.S. military.
We get to the point where not only do we know each other's likes and dislikes, we also know each other's breathing rate, step rate, because when you go out into the woods, you have to know these characteristics so that the team can work as one and move together undetected if that's what the situation calls for. A lot of times a Special Forces team will find itself deployed downrange, and they'll be the only American force in that country. There's no support system like if the 82nd deployed, where they come in with thousands of soldiers to take care of them. And Special Forces A-Team will have to depend on itself a lot of times, and that's why a Special Forces team has to be so strong.
Often Green Berets are the first ones into an area of conflict. Their invisibility is key to staying alive, so we can't show you some of their faces, but their words reveal why they are willing to do one of the most dangerous jobs in the military.
In Special Forces, I'll get the opportunity to do things that most people only get to see in the movies or dream about.
There's a lot placed on us. I like that responsibility.
You know, defending the Constitution of the United States is not an easy thing. Not anyone can do it.
To really understand this exclusive community, you have to start at a highly restricted area for the beginning of the selection process.
This is Nasty Nick, the Army's most grueling obstacle course. To earn a Green Beret, a soldier must master this mile-long trail of terror. There are 30 different obstacles designed to test every part of a soldier's physical and mental being. What are you looking for in this selection process?
We want a guy who's physically fit because there are times when he'll be called upon to travel long distances, move very fast, carry heavy loads. So ultimately, a guy's core makeup has to be strong. He has to be tough. He has to be committed. He has to be persistent at what he's doing.
Some of the obstacles out here are just downright scary. How do you help the guys conquer their fear?
Everybody is afraid of something, whether it's going through a tunnel, going in the water, or being outside at night by yourself alone, dealing with the animals. We're all afraid of something. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the guy who can deal with his fears in a stressful situation.
To even qualify, a soldier has already gone through basic training, graduated from airborne school, and served one full tour of duty. Less than half survived the grueling 23 days of physical and mental testing. And this is only phase 1. When we come back, I get a taste of how Special Forces survive behind enemy lines and learn firsthand how they get out in a hurry.
Behind Closed Doors will continue in a moment here on A&E.
On any given day, there are 1,500 Special Forces soldiers deployed to as many as 50 countries. How they enter an area is represented on the patch they wear on their uniform. The 3 bolts of lightning symbolize air, land, and sea, and they have mastered all methods of infiltration. The images of these methods have rarely been seen outside the U.S. military. They plunge, they swim, they creep, they drop, they emerge, and in one of their most dangerous maneuvers, they fall from the sky. They call it a halo, a high-altitude, low-opening entry into enemy territory.
The beauty with air infiltration is a lot of times we can exit the aircraft over a friendly country, glide in under canopy over the bad country, and land, and because we're such a small signature in the air, no one will know we're there.
In a halo drop, Special Forces soldiers strap on large parachutes, weapons, oxygen tanks, and 130 pounds of gear. Then they plummet at speeds of 120 miles an hour from 28,000 feet, almost 6 miles above the Earth. In under 2.5 minutes, they open their chutes just 4,000 feet from the ground. Once they land, the mission begins. A Special Forces A-team consists of 12 specialists. There's a captain, a warrant officer, a team sergeant, an intelligence sergeant, 2 medical sergeants, 2 engineering sergeants, 2 communications sergeants, 1 light and 1 heavy weapons sergeant. But each man is cross-trained in his other teammates' skills. The reason is simple. Should a man be killed in action, another can perform his role. It's all about survival. And at Fort Bragg, I was given an exclusive lesson.
We're going to talk about making fires. Basically just want a bow that's somewhere between 2 and 3 feet long, and any kind of a cord will work. In this case, I've got parachute cord, which may be carried by soldiers in the woods. And my stick, of course, is made out of yucca, and that's going to be the drill. What I'm going to do here is create a lot of friction by moving the drill back and forth, and that's going to cause this yucca to disintegrate. Then it's going to cause a coal to fall in here, and then if everything goes well, then we should be able to get a spark out of here. You should see some smoke start to come out.
Oh, I sure do. Look at that. Look at that. Very cool. Very, wow. You've got it going. Whoa, there it is.
So once you've got that, of course, you can put that into your fire stack, and you've got yourself a fire in the most primitive method.
How long do you think you'd survive out there knowing all this?
Forever.
I went from soldier to soldier, each showing me a different method for survival, from making weapons out of found objects, to purifying water, to finding food in the wild.
If we'll actually go down here, we'll start down at the bottom of the food chain with things that...
The big bugs.
Things that will actually make your skin crawl, but some of these things, the insects that you can ingest, are actually extremely high in a lot of vitamins, nutrients, and calories, and those sorts of things.
Protein even, right?
These are worms. that we've cooked up here that you can eat.
Oh, we always hear about this.
Generally, you want to break down your insects into hard-shelled and soft-shelled insects.
So do all special forces then have to learn to eat worms?
Yes, ma'am. The reason we do that is just to try and get them over that mental fence, get over that mental edge, to say that, well, I've eaten worms, I've eaten bugs, it can't be that bad. It can only get better from here.
Well, I know you don't let women in the special forces, but I would be forever ragged on when I got back if I didn't try to eat a worm, right? A little overcooked, I'd say.
Yeah, well, you always want to overcook everything. We always say there's no such thing as medium rare in a survival situation.
The psychological effect of eating a worm was worse than the actual taste. It just tasted burnt. Survival school prepares them for the worst-case scenario when lost behind enemy lines. But when operating in a foreign country, they draw on a whole other set of skills that have taken months, even years, to master.
Нападение. Атака. Противник. Enemy.
Behind closed doors, in a traditional classroom, Special Forces soldiers study at least one of 20 languages.
Noć je padala veoma brzo jer je nebo bilo prekriveno gustim.
They usually come in with zero knowledge about the language. They might have heard a few phrases here and there, but basically I would say they don't speak the language at all. So podzemlje would be?
Šta je odgovor?
Opposite. When they leave, they can hold a basic conversation.
Ja hoću da biti član od Jelena Beret jer ja volim profesionalnost vojnici. Ja volim da putam do inostranstvo, which means I like to work with professional soldiers and I like to travel to foreign countries. I think.
5 days a week, 6 hours a day, they learn lessons that can mean the difference between life and death. But this is what they need to know when they're in a foreign country. I learned firsthand what happens when they have to get out in a hurry. They call it a helo extraction, an emergency evacuation method, a flexible form of taking soldiers out of harm's way. It was developed over the jungles of Vietnam when helicopters unable to land had to quickly pluck soldiers from enemy territory. The Special Forces allowed me the rare opportunity to be extracted with an A-team. We began with a matter-of-fact briefing. As they tied thin ropes around my body, I tried to get a feel for what was about to happen.
Once the helicopter lifts soldiers up off the ground, how high do you go?
Well, once they reach a safe height of about 250 feet, that's when he's going to transition to a forward mode of travel. And then he can travel at about 70 knots.
Okay.
For Special Forces, this was business as usual.
You're ready, let's go.
Okay.
As we moved into position, I could hear the helicopter in the distance.
Now we just wait for the helicopter. When he comes in and drops the rope, we'll run. We're going to be the top hookup.
I always look forward to a glimpse into other people's lives, but when we dropped to our knees, my heart began beating a lot faster. The level of adrenaline in my body really took off when the rope was dropped and the soldiers ran toward it. I could barely stay on my feet because of the 120-mile-per-hour winds generated by the hovering Black Hawk helicopter. We hooked on first in the top position of the 5-man team. The rope went taut, we lifted off, and within seconds, we were flying hundreds of feet above the ground.
Are we okay?
You're okay.
Wow, we're going high.
Yeah.
In Special Forces, they say speed is light. So as we flew high above Fort Bragg, I tried to imagine what this would be like if this were a real evacuation. There would be no time to waste, no place for a helicopter to land, and there would most definitely be enemy fire aimed at the soldiers. To get out of a bad situation, the Special Forces soldier would most likely leave everything behind except for his weapon. And while hanging in full view from this rope, the dangling warrior would be firing into the trees, hoping to keep the enemy at bay. In this training mission, I landed safely after only 15 minutes. It was an experience I will remember for the rest of my life. When we return, I become part of one of the most dangerous training missions in Special Forces.
Behind Closed Doors will continue in a moment here on A&E. Behind Closed Doors with Joan Lunden continues here on A&E.
After a few days with the Army's Special Forces at Fort Bragg, I knew the basics. They can speak foreign languages. They can push themselves beyond ordinary human limits. They can survive in enemy territory, and they are ready for war.
For 2 months of the year, this peaceful North Carolina forest becomes the fictitious war-torn country of Pineland. In a very realistic war game, prospective Green Berets must infiltrate the country, transform a guerrilla army into a fighting battalion, and then destroy the rebels who have taken over Pineland.
Short of war, this is as real as it gets.
I can't see nothing, no vest, no vest. I'm moving up, I'm moving up.
This is the final test for soldiers training to be Green Berets. Here they're required to use everything they've learned in an unconventional warfare exercise codenamed Robin Sage.
There's nothing to shoot at, not from here.
In tonight's scenario, Special Forces help the people of Pineland fight a hostile military who have taken over their government. In these mock war exercises, there are 150 local volunteers who play the part of the oppressed Pineland residents, 120 volunteers from the 82nd Airborne who play the role of the hostile military, 40 Special Forces instructors, and 120 of the Army's newest batch of secret soldiers. To get to this point, it takes 2 difficult years of training. Those who have done it feel it was well worth the sacrifice.
The main thing you have to understand about us is we're extremely professional. We're extremely patriotic.
We're not only killers. We're primarily war fighters, but peacetime we again like to win the hearts and minds of the people.
We need to train as much as possible because you never know when the call will come out to actually do this for real.
For weeks, these trainees will perform mission after mission in Pineland, each more challenging than the last, so that in the future when they engage a real enemy, little is left to chance.
Get him!
An A-team is well-versed in many areas, but first and foremost, they are warriors. Warriors who know weaponry.
We are in the top secret arsenal of the Special Forces. We cannot show you where it is or what the outside of the building looks like. For here, weapons from all over the world are stored, cataloged, and repaired. It is arguably the largest cache of firearms anywhere in the world.
Okay, Joan, this is a heavy machine gun made in Sweden.
This facility is so secure that even people in the military are not allowed behind these many closed doors without the right credentials. There are walls and walls of weapons secured by locked screen doors. In total, there are over 7,000 different arms from 29 countries spanning more than 100 years.
That's a Czechoslovakian-made VZ-61 M12 Beretta. This is an M45 Bravo, the M50 Madsen. This is one of my favorites. It's got a lot of history behind it. This is the MP40. It's a German weapon that was used in World War II. And if you look, you can see some of the original Nazi-type markings here. That's a mini Uzi.
A mini Uzi?
A mini Uzi.
The reason for this stockpile of arms is for training. Green Beret soldiers are sent into countries to help local citizens whose weapons are often old, out of date, or unusual.
So how many different weapons might a Special Forces soldier know about?
There's quite a few. We learn approximately 53 different weapon systems, from the pistol all the way up to the heavy weapon anti-tank.
It is one thing to see the weapons in a warehouse, quite another to use them in battle. That was my next mission, a live ammunition training scenario with an A-team. But first, I had to demonstrate that I could handle a firearm.
Release the bolt, go forward.
I trained with a 7.5-pound rifle known as an M4. Special Forces use this weapon for varied missions, like close-quarter battle. The reason? It's accurate and it's lethal.
Good shot. Shooter ready, stand by. Up. Finger off the trigger.
Did you see that?
Good shot. Finger off the trigger. When you have a good sight alignment sight picture, your rounds will always be, hopefully, touching.
Right on target.
Yep.
Then, for the first time ever, the Army allowed a journalist to play a very real role in the highest risk training a Special Forces soldier does. There would be weapons loaded with live ammunition and powerful explosives. The mission with a 12-member A-team, we would enter an enemy-controlled building. I would blow the door off to let us inside. Step 1, piling on 35 pounds of protective armor.
It's like being a turtle, right? Having a little shell.
Step 2, a couple of quick but extremely important instructions to remember during the operation.
Plant, paste, and push.
Like a sequence. Don't try to do it too quickly.
Right.
That's when you make mistakes?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast.
That's right.
Step 3, a lesson in learning how to get into the most difficult areas using explosives.
Okay, basically, this is an example of one firing system. Its generic name is shock tube. Name of this is
Special Forces have a number of firing systems. They got me up to speed on the one we were going to use. This small explosive is so powerful that once initiated, a spark can travel at 6,000 feet per second. And when it finally reaches what they call the blasting cap, the discharge can actually take your leg off.
What we have right here is a system exactly like you're going to employ up there. Now, go ahead, hold it firmly in your hand. Okay. Now pulling this left one first, grab it and give a good firm jerk. Go to the second.
Wow.
And there you go.
All right.
That's about the same amount of deck cord that you're going to have down there on the charges. Now when you're coming up,
after practicing the handling and detonation, it was time for step 4. We would execute the mission for real.
I'm ready.
Sure, well, let me give you a breakdown of what we're going to do here.
Okay.
We have received information that there's going to be a high-level meeting of these insurgents, and we need to go obtain some intelligence that they have. So that's the scenario. What we're going to do is Bravo team will move to the berm, and they'll set up an overwatch position, providing security for us. If they open fire, then we need to move with a purpose.
Okay.
Okay? Let's do it.
My role during the exercise? To place the explosive in position and then detonate so we could enter the area. As we moved in, I kept thinking, real explosives, real bullets, real people. One mistake and a soldier could be injured, or worse, he could be killed. But this is how Special Forces train. They say you never want to do anything for the first time in battle, so they make it as realistic as possible. As I put the explosive on the door, the noise around me was deafening, but I forced myself to remain focused. One wrong move and this operation could become a catastrophe. Suddenly, the meaning behind what they call the fog of war became clear. When bullets are flying and smoke is everywhere, nothing is taken for granted.
Watch back.
Does anybody else have their heart beating?
Every time.
Every time?
Every
Are you
time.
serious?
Yeah.
Goes down.
I'll just go on record that doing that with all of this stuff on, and the eyes and the whole thing, it's extremely hot, and it's heavy, and it's really an adrenaline rush, especially when all the guns start going off. Is this normal all the time?
Yeah. Did you even notice the weight though once the charge blew?
No.
You don't even notice it.
When it was all over, I couldn't help but think that this was just a training exercise that happens on a regular basis. In Special Forces, they don't over-dramatize the danger or romanticize the job. This is their way of life. And for one brief moment, they let me be a part of their world.